Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Kung Fu. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with kind of what's like the main crux of this episode, and that is the continued investigation beyond like the thefts that were happening in town, and also the people who almost blew up Ryan, Althea, and Bo last episode. Well, it turns out, with Althea doing her thing, it ended up turning out it's a guy named Max, who, interesting enough, is played by the actor who played, God, what's his character? Like, he was just like Ryan, but it's like Detective Ryan, from Castle. I was like, hey, I didn't know that. There was something else where he was playing a bad guy in something, like, not recently, but like, relatively enough that I remember. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. Either way, he's a guy that, so it seems like my theory about was kind of on par, where it's like, he was basically hired to like destabilize places. That's kind of like where he used to be kind of gun for hire type of thing, but then he legitimized, and now he works for people, and he basically destabilizes places for the most profit. So he's doing the same thing to their city. He's trying to cause the most trouble. He's causing the most chaos, raising like the thefts and stuff like that. That's also why like he was willing to blow everything up, because the stuff itself wasn't the point. Causing the most chaos, causing crime rates to increase. It's basically trying to put the city in a position where a certain bill gets signed, because it turns out that he was basically being paid because there's like, what was it? There was some kind of thing that was going to be passed through, and basically the lobbyist worked for this very specific private security company, so they were really pushing for like this private security company would have gotten all like the benefits of this particular thing. So someone there, like I brought up last episode, someone's basically taking what Russell 10 started to do and then going all the way. He was just more so focused about doing what he had to do, buying up properties in the city, just so it can help them in the long run get to immortality. But someone's taking that a step further, and they're just trying to like damage the city as much as possible, especially after it's coming back from a devastating earthquake. It's already in a bad enough position, and that's why Max is here to exploit some of those weaknesses. In fact, strengthen, make those cracks even worse, so that they have no choice but to he could, whoever he's working for could easily swoop in and take advantage of the situation, like they are. Sadly, Nikki and her family are on his radar now, because he was at the meeting, because hearing all of the community being in an uproar about how their representative isn't doing enough. And, you know, for him, he was hoping that being the representative, like being on this board, would help him get closer to his people, getting more in touch with his roots. But in fact, it kind of had the opposite effects. He's like, I feel even more disconnected. It's like, I need someone to help me. Like, and because I thought the direction they were going to head with that was that Jin was going to like fill that role. The guy was going to step down, and Jin was going to run, like, you know, go in the political game. He still is, but it's going to be more so as an advisor to help this guy Anthony reconnect with the community. Because he is trying his best, but that's a complicated thing about politics, because one thing that might be good overall can seem one way, but then you got to read into the depths of like, oh yeah, this thing that's trying to get passed, there's actually other stuff snuck in there. And it's like, there's just so much like red tape and complications when it comes to like the politics of stuff. Just trying to make a change isn't the easiest thing. Like, there's just so much litigation and legislation is the word I'm looking for, that you kind of have to go through a lot of red tape, which, you know, it's a whole complicated thing. So Jen, you know, being such a pillar of the community, who's helped kind of unite the community over these past, you know, seasons, I think is going to be an important thing going forward, but I think it's going to be an uphill battle. I think it's so interesting too, because they've been setting the stage, especially because Jin was helping a lot more with the community. I mean, and still continues to, but that was a big part of his story last season, was helping out with the community, and now it's even more so in this regard, in this season. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see. But circling back, Max ultimately ends up kidnapping Althea and they all have to work together because she's deleting files that will like incriminate Max with being responsible for the thefts and stuff like that, and even the fact is connecting the payment he got for all that. But sadly, well, her life was on the line, so she had no choice but to do what he wanted to, and she's too good at what she does, so she ended up deleting all the evidence. Granted, he got busted in the end regardless, because whole kidnapping and attempted murder thing of it all, so they got him for that. But this sadly does take him down, and it can at least help the community for a while, like not have to deal with him actively going after it. But the people who hired him are still out there, and they're just going to probably find someone else to continue to do that. And I am curious, is there going to be a connection between just the timing? The fact is that Mei Lee and, the restaurant's getting like those investors around the same time. I don't know if there's any correlation there. The timing just felt weird, but it feels like that could be a separate thing. But it feels like ultimately, just with everything going down in this episode, just feels like everything's connected. Like everything just happening all at once that feels like too much of a coincidence. So, well, since I'm talking about it, I'll talk about it. Mei Lee and Jen sit down with the investors, and that one dude had no tact at all, because he's coming at it from like a business perspective. It's like, but this is more than just a business. This restaurant had, like, it's a family thing, like obviously Mei Lee's and Jen have run this for so long, and obviously it's a centerfold of their family. And he's talking about like, oh yeah, like your staff, we're gonna have to cut. It's like, right, those people haven't worked for you for weeks anyway. And it's like, also, we'll cut corners a little bit with the vegetables. But it's like, no, the people, we get a very specific vegetables, because that's also the people they get it from in the grand scheme of things helps with the community as well. So they know right, this is a very trusted place to get vegetables and stuff, because I think it's a very specific people that they get it from the community as well. So there's layers to right, us picking someone else that we don't really trust, reasons behind not going down that route. But the guy was just so stuck in his way, and even being like, oh, you'll fail. The fact is that you can't do this alone. And the lady, who I did not recognize who she was, if I didn't see her name in the opening credits, I wouldn't have pieced it together. But that's Kim Rhodes, and that took me by surprise for a second. I was like, whoa, because first and foremost, I'm not used to seeing her with longer hair, especially longer blonde hair. Because I haven't seen her as a blonde in a very long time. The things I best know Kim Rhodes from are The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. She plays Zack and Cody's mom, but also in Supernatural. Her character popped out quite often over the course of the series. She popped up every once in a while, but in Supernatural, she was a brunette. I think she eventually was a brunette in the later parts of Zack and Cody too, but I think her hair was a little longer, but it wasn't it wasn't really that long. And in Supernatural, it was also long too. It was also short too. So it's for one, I have not seen her as a blonde in a long time, but also her hair being that long almost took me by surprise. I almost didn't recognize her, but it's not until that scene when she came back to talk to Mei Lee that I was like, wait, is that Kim Rhodes? And like I said, if I hadn't seen her name in the opening credits, I wouldn't have pieced that together. But it's just only when she started talking, I was like, wait, that's Kim Rhodes. And I was looking at her face long enough, I was like, oh, that totally is her. That's wild. Either way, the fact is, she, even during the initial conversation, the initial negotiations, she seemed to be the more reasonable one. She wasn't as douchey as her. He was a little too gung-ho about it, but she's the one that told Mei Lee, hey, you're the one that has all the power, because our company knows what your value is. You can come to the table and kind of sweeten the deal so that, you decide what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. And it's why are you doing this? Because I've tasted your food. I know it's good. And I know what the benefits of working with you could be. So later on, it all works out, because they came to the, even she's like, we won't really know how this will work out until we talk to the partners back at the company. But it's which you're almost oh man, she seems nice. But then once again, in my jadedness of, sometimes I get super suspicious of characters. I'm the timing still just bothers me so much. And the fact that she just went so far out of her way. I mean, I'm not someone just to, I think that's a larger conversation to have, where you just assume big business. Of course, you're kind of a lot of people see big business as evil, and I'm not trying to go down that route. And I don't know, maybe on some level I am super suspicious of big business coming in, kind of trying to like buy up a mom and pop. It's just like the timing is interesting with like someone trying to, seems like they're trying to put the city and the community in a very compromised position to kind of buy up stuff and, you know, take control and just kind of benefit from it themselves. So it just doesn't sit right with me. And like I said, she went out of her way with Mei Li to seem like an ally just so she can stab you in the back. I'm scared of that, and I don't want that. Well, for one, it's Kim Rhodes, so that's extra reasons why I don't want her to be a bad guy or something, or this is some like manipulation. But we'll see. Hopefully it all benefits and works for them in the long run. But Mei Li did kind of lay down the groundwork. And once again, it comes down to whether or not the bosses decide to take that deal. But the fact is she like set that up for Mei Li to kind of, you know, spike it. That makes you go like, she must know something. She does say like this restaurant is so important. I mean, it is the pillar to this community. It kind of was the foundation. It kind of has so many roots and connections to this community. Like if it gets bought up or whatever happens to it, it could really like ripple out and affect the rest of the community in a massive way. Especially because so much of the community came together to help with the restaurant. So that's why I'm like I said, I continue to be weary. I'm hopeful for the best, but I'm pessimistic at the same time, worried that like that's just going to be like you're going to get sideswiped in that situation. I hope not, but we'll see. Another element to this episode is the whole situation with Pei Ling. She has memories a little bit about her time in the afterlife, that other world with the other warriors and guardian spirits. And then she saw Jilan, which we now find out Jilan's still alive, which we'll circle back to that later. But doing some research, it turns out the alchemist Zhao, she had the ability to always go to the other world, but she, like, because her plan, she was initially, what Russell Tan did last season, killing Kerwin before him to become immortal. The Emperor couldn't do that all those years ago when Zhao was trying to make him immortal, which I think speaks volumes. Is like, wow, it shows how much of a garbage human being you were, Russell Tan. This is an emperor back in the day who wanted to become immortal but wasn't willing to sacrifice their son. You were super willing to kill 2 of your children to get what you want. So it's just like, man, just shows how much you suck, Russell Tan. So but because Zhao can just go to that world, but she planned on activating a spell that would basically bring the Emperor back to life, resurrect him in that other world, and then, you know, bring him back to like the realm of the living. But she didn't know, she didn't trust her ability to go there and come back to be able to bring him with her. So she came up with a means of, by resurrecting him there and then going to use that necklace, the one that the device, that the thing that Pei Ling has around her neck. It's like using that to tether both the person you're trying to bring back and herself. By connecting them together, her ability allows them to return to the world of the living, and that's what happened with Pei Ling. So, just as they thought, the alchemist is in there somewhere. She is tethered to Pei Ling. Big question is, why did she pick Pei Ling in particular? Well, Pei Ling's assuming is like, right, she knew that if you were around, you would not want anything to happen to me, which she doesn't, because it's like they want to destroy the necklace, because it's like, right, if we do that, we can make sure that the alchemist Zhao doesn't get what she wants. But there's a good chance that's the only thing keeping Pei Ling here. And for Nikki, it's like, I finally got you back, Shifu. I don't want to let you go again. So, but like the fact is that Pei Ling was like, oh, we need to destroy this. We can't let Zhao have her way. I'm like, how do you know this isn't exactly what Zhao wants? Like, maybe she can't die. Well, no, because like Pei Ling ends up destroying it. So I was like, could it be? I mean, first and foremost, one, we don't know. That could be a fake necklace. The fact is she just wasn't wearing it at the time. I was like, that's weird. And she just happens to have it sitting on the table, even though the entire time she was back, she kept wearing it. This just happened to be the time she took it off. And then Nikki kind of informed her about everything. I was like, something's up with that. That timing felt weird. So I'm like, did you switch it out with a fake? would you have had time to make a fake and get that done? It didn't sit right with me. Or maybe like, I get the feeling like it might not be something that can be destroyed, because I do feel like it ties in with the compass thing that Henry's got going on, which we'll get to in a second. But I feel like there's got to be some correlation or connection on that front as well. So we'll see. But the fact is that Pei-Ling was like, yeah, we have to destroy this. And I'm like, yeah, but what if that's what Zhao wants, because destroying it. But I'm like, because at first I was like, if she got Nikki to destroy it, I was like, that would speak volumes. But once again, Pei-Ling is the one that ended up destroying it. So that's why I feel like, I don't know. Maybe it's just once again, piece itself back together. Because speaking of familiar actors, Henry ends up meeting a dude who's a old colleague of his dad, who, interestingly enough, that's the actor who played Anatoly in Arrow, which messed me up so much, because I was like, oh, it's so weird, because obviously he talks with a very like Russian accent as Anatoly, so like hearing him not doing that accent kind of threw me for a loop. I was like, oh, it feels so weird, it feels so unnatural, because I'm like, I want to say that's like one of the only things I've ever seen that actor who plays Anatoly, who was in this, like that's the only other thing I know him from. It's like, so it took some adjusting. It's like, oh, this is weird. But this is the guy that Henry's dad was finding the compass with as well. So luckily him and Henry were able to figure it out. It was something that long ago they gave up, because they were searching all over China, but Henry's dad told him last season, and this is something I'm curious if we dive even deeper into, maybe not, but it's like, right, China isn't the only place of magic. There is, like, every other country has its own, like, mystical, like, myths and legends and stuff. So kind of taking that, it's like, right, the legend of this particular compass, like, it started in China, but around that same time, like, China was interacting with other, like, countries at the time. So that ultimately ended up finding it in Iceland. Sadly, home dude caught a bullet in the head. And I was like, once again, paranoia. I'm like, did he fake his death just to set you up? Like, whoever is coming after this compass is most likely after everything that's going down in, I would assume in San Francisco too, but I don't know. You would assume so, just because it's like, I don't know. It's just like those are like some well-armed people. I mean, granted, it's mercenaries, but you'd assume that's like a very rich person thing to do. So someone's trying to do stuff in San Francisco, and someone's also trying to do stuff with this compass that Henry's looking for. So it's like, I wonder if had they had their eyes on Henry the entire time or not. Because once again, because I was trying to understand like fully why Henry was motivated to do what he's been doing. So I guess I didn't remember it, but Henry's dad gave him a final message of, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you who you were. So just like Nikki was on the discovery to find out who she was after being kind of not told about her truth about, the warrior bloodline and everything. But now we add in the fact is that Henry's got something going on too, and he activated that compass or whatever. And like I said, I was like, oh, there's an opening in it that looks like it could exactly be fitted by the same thing that Pei-Ling / Zhao has. So I'm like, that thing can't be broken. Either it's a fake or it's automatically going to piece itself back together. I actually kind of halfway expected that when we saw Henry activated, we'd cut back and the thing would be piecing itself back together or something. Maybe not. Because yeah, it looks like big, like a large thing like that. But that stone is probably like too small to fit in that. But it feels like something fits there. I kept thinking the necklace the entire time. I was like, no, it's too small. So I was like, no. And now I'm sitting here saying that out loud. It's like, no, that's stupid. It feels like there has to definitely be another piece to that. So I think Henry is going to come back home now that he's got the compass, has some allies back home and help him, but it's going to be an awkward time considering, like, hey, Bo and Nikki are kind of a thing now. He confessed that he liked her. Once again, we still don't know what his circumstances are. Henry was the mysterious stranger himself at one point in time before we found out more about him. So I don't think Bo will be the bad guy, but once again, his mentor, him knowing, not only being that skilled fighter that he is, the hacker that he is, like, that just seems like you're a little too well trained. And I'm like, you got to have some connection to the bad guy who's like, okay, you think you're doing this all for the right reasons, and it's like it's all going to be the ends justify the mean, a little bad to go the long way, or maybe he doesn't know whoever he's connected to is behind all this. I don't know, because he sounded like in the last episode, in the first episode of the season, that his master was dead, but we've got Shifu's popping up all over the place, back from the dead. Well, I say that figuratively, and that they're popping up all over the place because we've had the one Shifu come back to life, but still. But I think just the glimpse I caught of the preview of the next episode, I think Henry might be coming back to town. It's probably the only way he could keep this device safe. I don't know if he can even turn to his father's allies, so what was it? The Wong... Oh God, I'm blanking on their names. The group that he was a part of that was helping deal with everything last season with the bell and stuff. Was it the Wong Zhao? Wong Zhe... Like, what? It was something like that. I don't remember their name now. So I'm wondering, will he might end up turning to them rather than Nikki, but... Well, we'll see. Another element to this episode I didn't touch on. Well, I touched on it earlier, but now we had the Jilon situation. She's basically in another world after like the source and all that like collapsed last episode. That world collapsed, and so basically Jilon as well as the other guardian and warrior spirits found themselves in this other world, and I was thinking it was the same world, but I thought because all the energy was gone that basically the place is completely and utterly barren. That's what I was kind of thinking. Like that's like, oh, like basically you sucked out the entire life force of the place and now it looks like a desert like that. But it seems like it is actually a completely different world. Simon, which I'll get to that in a second, ended up kind of saying like, right, there has to be like an equilibrium for like where all the spirits of the guardian and warrior bloodlines go. So the universe needed to balance itself out and put them somewhere, hence their current circumstance, their current destination. So, but as I brought up the Simon thing, that was interesting. I was like, of course Simon would be there. Because Simon's the last... Was he the last guardian? Or did she... I think he was the last guardian she killed, right? Because he's the one that had the Morning Star, right? I believe he did, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Either way, it's like, it is kind of sad. It's like, I'm about to say, it's like, well, there's no chance of Kerwin being there, I mean, considering his circumstances, but also he wasn't of the warrior guardian bloodline. So it is the thing of, yeah, it's like, wow, I find that so poetic. Like, after you try to be better and do better, now in the long run, it's like, oh, cool, you're here with one of your victims. I want to say he was actually her last victim, wasn't he? If things went down in order, if I remember them correctly. Either way. So it's so poetic that he would be there. And even he's like, oh, how'd you die? She's like, oh, self-sacrifice. He's like, really? I expected your death to be excruciating, and I did expect it to be you doing something good. And it's like, yeah, a lot's happened while you were dead. And it's like, yeah, she made a lot of mistakes. And she does apologize, but it doesn't make up for the fact that you severely went out like off the rails and went super bad and everything. But the problem is this place also has... The fact is that person has a mask on, you're like, all right, that must be like a big reveal or something. But whoever it is has a weapon that basically reaps all of the spirits of the warriors and guardians, but it doesn't affect Jilon. And the moment it's like, wait, you said that it kills spirits and stuff like that. The moment that happened, I was like, she's still alive, right? Because she came into this realm alive, so maybe that's why she didn't she just assumed that she was dead when the world collapsed, but it's like, no, she just got sucked into here just like the rest of the guardian and warrior spirits, but she's still alive. That's why the weapon can kill the spirits. It's kind of like, yeah, once that one slash, even the smallest nick from that blade will go kaput. I don't know whether it absorbs you or whether it just completely destroys your soul, but luckily Jilon is human, so she could still die here, and the moment she dies and potentially becomes a spirit, then she could be perma-killed, but for now she's alive, so that does give her immunity from that blade. But the fact is that once again, that person's face being covered up means it's going to be probably quite the reveal of who they are. Maybe not. we'll see. But yeah, I was wondering, like, with the way they set Jilon's situation up, I was like, is she going to be alive? And it's like, yeah. So, because that was kind of a big question. I did kind of have it spoiled for me because I was looking up the actress who plays Jilon just because she's in another CW show. It's actually a CB. I don't even know what channel. Maybe it's a CTV show, and it's a Canadian show, The Family Law. Like, she's in it. I know she's in a couple episodes of the first season, but I was looking it up, and for Kung Fu it says 2021 to present. So, like, right, so she was still going to be a part of the show. So I kind of spoiled that for myself, but still, that was something I was wondering by the end of last season, wondering like whether that was something that was set in stone. And it was like she had a redemption arc, and I didn't know if like they would just let things kind of end there, but seems like it's not the case. So she's still alive, so it's going to be interesting to see. Ironically enough, her sister is alive, so that's quite fascinating. I mean, granted, it's not just 100% her sister, it's also the alchemist Zhao as well. We'll see what ends up happening, because they have to like be in the same scene together again, and not just, Pei Ling in her head or Zhao messing with her. But the other element to this episode is Althea finds out about her circumstances, and Evan ends up saying that the DA is willing to cut her a deal, but basically she'd have to say no to, she'd be banned from any internet access or technology for the next year, which is a big thing because she even says it later on. It's like, it's the cornerstone of who she is, but also like she built businesses around that. So even if she wanted to work towards work like using her tech skills, working towards building a business, she can't now if she decides to take this deal. But if she doesn't, they're going to move for criminal charges. And the problem is, the moment that I got introduced, I was like, damn, that sucks, because Althea is a tech whiz of the group. Like, she's the one that does the hacking and stuff like that, looking up information. And for her, it's like, right, she's going to use as much of her superpower, handling the computer side of things, for now, just trying to do as much good as she can before it gets taken away from her, because she didn't have the heart to tell anybody at the time. But I was like, right, now that they've introduced Bo, he's going to end up being her replacement for a while until that time frame is up, sadly. So she ultimately ends up telling Dennis about it, but she's like, at the end of the day, I will get through it. If I could get through this, we can get through anything. So she's looking at things from a more positive spin. But I am curious to see what Althea does do once the internet access has kind of been taken away from her, because it's, because even Evan's like, oh, you're good at other stuff too. And she's like, yeah, but not as good as I am with like computers and stuff. So like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what Althea kind of does going forward with all of that. It's going to be interesting in general to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.